Good afternoon. Welcome to the December edition of the Ascent by Meridian Technology Center. I'm Rebecca Eastham, and I'm delighted to be here today. Many of you who have joined us before, you're used to Julie Griffin hosting, and she is at a conference presenting herself actually this week. And so I get the pleasure of being your host today. And I'm really excited because our guest is someone that I've had the pleasure of working with for coming up on 15 years. I can't believe it, but Lorinda Schrammel, who is joining us, is just an amazing person who has built a full career on this one topic of professional development, especially in the area of leadership. So I'm delighted to welcome Lorinda Schrammel with Growth Training and Consulting with us today. Hello,
Hey,
how are you, Lorinda?
I'm great. How are you, Rebecca?
Good. I can't believe it's December 1st already. That has happened quickly. And getting ready for the holiday season, and the weather sure is making us feel like it, isn't it?
It feels like winter today. Yes, indeed. I'm a summer girl, so I probably have on way too many layers.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. You have been in the world of professional development in one way or another for almost 2 decades. Is that fair to say?
At least we'll just
Yeah.
leave it at that. Yeah. I started when I was 10, right?
Right, just a mere child. So let's kind of start with that, Lorinda. What interested you in kind of seeing this opportunity to be a part of helping people grow in their professional development, especially in the world of leadership and management? So, kind of, how did you get into the industry, and what has that career path been like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of fell into training and development back in the 90s. When I was in college, I actually had one class in training and development, and it was the first year that was offered. It just happened to be an elective in my degree plan, and I took it. And I loved the class, but I never once thought that's something I would do for a lifetime. It just never crossed my mind. And I just had an opportunity when I was working here at Meridian, back in the mid 90s, when someone said, "Hey, could we certify you in this particular training program? We just need some extra trainers." And I wasn't working in that capacity at all. And I said, "Sure, why not?" I'd grown up doing speech and debate. And so I felt comfortable in front of people, but I certainly didn't know this side of it. And so I jumped in, eager, young, thought it'd be fun. And it really was fun. And it's just something I've done for, gosh, since the mid 90s. For the most part, I took a little venture outside of training and development for a few years, helping a friend who had started a business. But even then, I would take days off so I could go do a training class here or there. Just as I've always done it since I started. And I love, love, love interfacing with people of all sorts, all industries, all backgrounds to understand how I can help them be more successful in their roles.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, because you work both with individuals, but then you also look at it from an organizational perspective as well. Talk about how those two kind of interact and play together, especially when we use that big phrase of professional development.
Yeah, so I mostly do group trainings. That's really where my niche is, but I do also do individual coaching. And then sometimes in my group classes, I work one-on-one with folks after class, in between classes, just to help them get up to speed. So I do a little bit of all of it, but my main focus is doing group trainings, and they're usually in leadership experience or supervisory skills. And that's really what I like to do. I am a certified Gallup strengths coach. And so a lot of my individual coaching is around strengths and how folks can use their strengths in whatever professional roles they have. And also how they could use it. We don't turn on strengths at 8 and turn them off at 5. So also, how does that, play in their lives outside of the workplace? So I get to kind of touch on different types of things with different individuals in different companies, different industries, or even if it's just a personal development type of issue.
Yeah. Why, what are you seeing kind of in today's workplace? So much has changed. And I was, especially in the last 5 years, right, of just kind of the workplace structure has changed. New generation really kind
Mhm.
of taking over the workforce, so that's new compared to when you and I first entered into the workforce, and as
Right.
we're that phasing out.
Yeah.
Why is this topic of leadership development or management kind of training, why is that so important, especially in today's workplace?
I always rely on great research. And my favorite statistic related to leadership and supervision goes back to a survey Gallup did, and they continue to do this to make sure they're big on employee engagement. And but something they said in a research they did, gosh, it's probably been 10 years now, that 80% of people who leave the workforce are leaving because, of their supervisor. Now, that may not be the only reason, but it's often a contributing factor. Sometimes it is the factor, and
So
that tells
80%, 8 out
80%.
of 10 people leave a job because of who they report to.
Yes,
That's kinda
and
mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling, and it's very concerning, and it gives me great hope that I've got job satisfaction, job security for a long time. But it's concerning to me that we have that many supervisors out there that are struggling, and
Mhm.
leaders that are struggling. And, when I have supervisory training or leadership class, I ask, what type of training have you all had? And a lot of them, it's just they felt themselves their way through it. They didn't really have any training. They might have
Mhm.
read a book or they might have seen an online course at some point, but nothing that really helped prepare them to be a supervisor. So no wonder there are so
Yeah.
many people struggling as leaders today. And so that alone tells me we need to do some work around leadership and supervision and helping
Mhm.
people be equipped, even if they've been a supervisor or a leader for many years. If they've never had any training to help them see there's a different way of doing it that might help you be more successful, I want to help be a part of that. And I think it's just eye opening for people to go, oh, I didn't realize I shouldn't be doing this or that.
Yeah.
Even if they haven't had great results, they just keep doing it because they don't know what else to do. And so I think it's just an opportunity for us um, uh, to really plug into people, find out how we can help them, find out what they're doing that may be actually being, hurtful to them or to the people that report to them, and how can we change, give them some new ideas, new ways of thinking, and that's really what I love to be a part of.
Yeah, and, a couple things, you got my mind thinking of several questions as we talk about. One, Julie Griffin was very nice and gave us a shout out, said we're doing a good job, so we're keeping her, legacy alive here, so thanks,
Good.
Julie, with that. And, um, Taylor Hutton asked about, when we talk about this topic of supervisors in
Mm,
particular, and I kind of want to come back to a question of just, are there some things that supervisors should avoid?
mm.
Definitely avoid. But before we get to that, um, you brought up a good point of oftentimes people kind of get thrust into a role, right? As a
Yes.
manager, maybe they've been there the longest. They
Yes.
technically sometimes, my background and you and I have worked in HR a lot of just, oh, we have somebody that's technically strong, so the next best step for them is to be a supervisor, and we just kind of
Yes.
thrust them into that. So, what are some core, if you had to sum up kind of some core things that a good supervisor would know or be able to do? Talk about those first. And then what are those things, going back to Taylor's question of what should supervisors avoid?
Great. So the first part of that, things I think supervisors need to lead with, first of all, is empathy. And
Mm,
I am probably the worst person to talk about leading with empathy because it's a struggle for me. It's not how I'm typically wired. But I found when I was a supervisor, when I was able to attempt, at the very least, to understand where my employees were coming from, it always went better for me and our interactions, our communication, if I led with empathy. So I would say,
uh-huh.
figure out how you can at least try to understand where your employees are coming from. The next part of that, I think, is how are you communicating? Is it more of a one-way communication, or have you actually built a relationship with your employees? I think that helps everything when our employees feel like we're there to support them, we're there to help them, and we're on the same team with them. We've got their back. And so I think communication plays a big role in how our employees feel supported by us. And then I think supervisors need to not be afraid of conflict. Conflict
Mm.
is something a lot of people are afraid of. And I mean, who wants to sign up for conflict? Not me. But we don't want to be afraid of it because we really can have some great things that come as a result of conflict. And so instead of always avoiding, how can we start to, look at not just the symptoms of this conflict, but what is actually the core and how can we work to resolve it? So those would be three things that I would say supervisors definitely need to look at. And where are they? Do their own little rating of themselves. Are they effective in those areas? And if not, what can they do to learn more and to grow in those areas?
And I see those. It's interesting, those three, Lorinda. One, I want to work for somebody that does those three things for me for sure. And I can see how they kind of relate to one another because
Well,
if I avoid conflict, I'm probably going to do it by not making eye contact with you or having that conversation by the coffee maker. Like I'm going to avoid talking to you or communicating because of that. And then that gives the perception of I don't care about you. So wow, I just can see like how you can get on the crazy cycle um, with a coworker or an employee when I avoid all three of those. So wow, those are powerful three easy things that are deeply connected.
absolutely. And I think we find with supervisors, a lot of the stuff we do can connect back to those three things.
Mm.
If you're giving feedback, if you have trust issues, if we're trying to build a team, if we could think about where are we showing up to understand where everyone's coming from, how are we communicating, and how are we handling and managing conflict, I think it really helps us be better supervisors if we can start to see how all of those things really tie back to those core issues that were mentioned. Now, you did ask what do supervisors
Yeah.
need to avoid? Well, I would never say avoid conflict.
Right.
Obviously, you need to be able to hit that head on. So things I would avoid, not giving feedback. I think feedback
Mm.
is something is critical. So if I ever want to lean towards, it's okay, I don't need to do that. No, you need to give feedback and give it often and timely. And so I would say don't avoid giving conflict. Another thing I would say is don't avoid the hard stuff. So if we've got
Mhm.
employees that are doing things that are not appropriate, that are not productive, whatever the cause may be, we have to approach those, we have to handle those, we have to give feedback, we have to work alongside. So that would be another thing is avoiding feedback. And sometimes people say, well, I gave my performance review, what else do I need to do? Feedback needs to be ongoing, so don't avoid giving feedback. It can only
Yeah.
help you and help the employee. And then one last thing that I wouldn't avoid building relationships. Sometimes people think, well, we're in the workplace, we don't need to have relationships with our employees. And
Mhm.
I say, you need to go all in. We don't need to be best friends, but we need to
Right.
have good working relationships with everyone on our teams because that does help us with communication and working through conflict and understanding where people are coming from. So those are things I would not avoid.
Yeah. No, those are great. You had mentioned, kind of talking about your background that you're certified in Gallup's Strength
Mhm.
Finder, and am I correct in saying that Gallup don't they have some of this work in regards to engagement and the importance of do I have a friend at work or that best friend at work? Because
Yes.
I think we are seeing there's some importance to having a relationship at work.
Absolutely. Gallup, even before Strengths, was a research company. And so that's really what they are built on. And they continue that today, even though a lot of people associate them with Strengths, which is a wonderful aspect to their business. But they did 25 years of research to understand what helps companies be profitable, that the employees are engaged, that they can retain them, and that everyone's being productive. And one of those, from that research, there was 12 questions, core questions they call their Q12. And one of those questions was, do you have a best friend at
Mm.
work? And people say, why does it matter if we have best friends? It's not the best friend that we can go shopping with aspect, although that's fine if that's what works for you. It's really more about, do I have someone that gets me, that understands and commiserates with me when things are not going well, or that can
Mm.
celebrate with me when things go well at work? Because it's great to have, your family or your friends outside of the workplace, but they just don't understand it quite like someone at work that gets it when, we've been working on this for months and we celebrate, or, oh, this is really struggling, or I'm not getting along with this person, and they get it because they're there too. And so that's really the aspect behind it. You feel that support in a different way than you might with just, a family member. And so if Gallup says it's that important that it's made that top 12 list of questions, I'm going to fully support it, and I'm going to find ways to make sure that happens with my team members.
Yeah. Oftentimes we get promoted into a role as a supervisor and maybe we've been peers. And
Mhm.
so they have been that best friend at work or that, that close friend at
Right.
work that maybe we commiserated about the boss together. And now all of a
Yes.
sudden I'm the boss. How do you have some tips on how to help somebody that moves into that role that now all of a sudden they're supervising people who used to be peers?
Yes, that is such a difficult position to put people in, and it happens all the time. And we do want to give people opportunities, but we need to, I think, as a supervisor, if I was promoting someone up out of a peer work group into a supervisory role, I would really think hard and fast about how can I prepare this person if they're going to be supervising people that they
Mm,
used to be peers with, because it is so difficult. In my supervisor training, we talk about individual contributors kind of have their own fraternity. They're the ones that kind of go and, they talk about the boss by the water cooler, as they say. And then suddenly I'm the boss
yeah.
and everyone's talking about me. And so how do we prepare those? I've heard the term bud to boss, right? How we're promoting someone up out of this buddyship with their fellow employees, and now they're supervising them. So how do we prepare them? How do we prepare the team for,
Oh.
this person, was your peer, now they're your supervisor. What are going to be some issues that could be concerning to you? And also making sure that we set the field straight, that you don't get special treatment because you're my friend, even though we used to be, buddies on the same team together. Now I'm a supervisor. My responsibilities and my tasks may be similar, but I'm also responsible for everyone on my team. And so, how does that relationship change? Can we still be friends, or should we not be friends? And so, I think having those conversations when all this happens can help set up success for both that person who's being promoted and also for their peers. And so, we can alleviate some jealousy or
Oh,
some of
yeah.
those conversations behind the back. We don't want to have those because we want everyone to be successful. So, I think it's all in setting expectations and having communication and conversations ahead of time.
Those are great suggestions, Lorinda, of just, yeah, it would naturally occur to me to set those expectations up for that person that I
Yeah,
may be moving into that role, but I hadn't thought about the importance of setting the expectations with the team, and what
absolutely.
a huge help to that supervisor to say,
Yes.
I'm gonna let me go help have this conversation for you,
Yes.
and set that tone. It takes such a or it's a shared burden then or
It
a
is.
shared, transition. I really like that
Yes.
idea,
Yes.
and there are so many advantages to promoting from within, right? Provides
Yes.
opportunity, you've got that institutional knowledge, hopefully the team has high trust, which allows you to have good conflict, healthy conflict, so there's
Yes.
a lot of advantages as long as you set it up right.
That's
So,
right. And it's just it has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen, so we have to do that with intent.
yeah. So one of the first ways that you and I got to know each other was my early days in working here at Meridian. You kind of have what I think when I think of you is kind of one of your signature programs that you
Mhm.
facilitate, and that's the Supervisory Academy.
Yes.
And I'm so pleased that Meridian offers that. It's a program that we offer every semester, and it fills up every semester. I think some come just because it's facilitated by you, but the content
Oh,
is also outstanding, especially for folks that we've moved into a management role that
mhm.
they don't have a lot of background or very limited experience in. So, talk a little bit about the Supervisory Academy, kind of what the components are and how it's structured.
Sure. So, the Supervisory Academy is a 7 session course, and we like to do them 7 weeks in a row. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. There's always holidays and things that might interfere, but it's 7 sessions. And the first 2 sessions really are geared around the person as a supervisor. So, understanding their their supervisory style. Everyone is a little different. We're not all cookie cutter supervisors, and thank goodness for that, right? And so it's really helping them understand their style. And then they can start to understand a little bit about others. When they understand themselves, they can understand others. And so then we really take a turn in the third session and start really focusing on the supervisory skills. And whether that is helping them understand, human nature, which could be like motivation or change, how do we handle those with others that probably are motivated differently? You may have 5 people on your team and they may be motivated all very differently. So we can't, just all give them balloons when, they've done something well, because some people might like that and some people might not. And so we talk a lot about motivators and demotivators and how to deal with change. Unfortunately, change happens all the time these days. And so how do we, deal with that? And then we really get into the communication issues, which I mentioned earlier, feedback, how to have some of the hard conversations. We talk about that. And what I found is a lot of people struggle with, having those crucial conversations, as they call them. So we talk a little bit about that. And how to, maybe be more assertive. There's a lot of supervisors out there that struggle with saying what needs to be said. They don't want to hurt feelings, and they don't want to, this person I don't know how to say this. And so assertiveness is really a struggle for a lot of supervisors. So we talk a lot about assertiveness when it comes to communicating with employees. And then we talk about conflict and dealing with conflict. We talk about trust. Trust is a foundational part of being a supervisor, and they need to trust you and you need to be able to trust them. So how do we build that trust? How do we extend trust, especially when I have someone that I'm not sure I can trust? So how do I do that? How we deal with conflict effectively. How do people behave when they're in conflict? Because we all behave differently when we're in conflict. So how do I recognize when someone might be in conflict? What can I do to help them through that? And then we close out with a class on teamwork. And I just think it's a nice little bow to put at the end so that we can understand we're all in this together, or that's how we should be. And are we actually just, a group of people that show up at the same place every day, or are we really a team? And what's the difference? And how do I deal with the, external factors as well as the internal factors that might, upset our team or maybe hinder our success? So we try to cover a lot of things, but in all of that, I always encourage everyone, this is our content, but tell me your experience. I think we learn best from each other. So I love that we have so many different people from so many different industries and backgrounds. They may be brand new to supervising. They may have been doing it for 20 years, but they're just winging it, and they're hoping that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And that's when I love it, when people say, hey, I tried this and it didn't work, or hey, I've done this and it worked. That's where I think we can really learn the most.
So you talked about the class, and kind of typically meets once a week for that 7-week period. What do you find kind of happens from session to session? Because I think as I look at this class, there's some really neat things of, hey, I learned this content this week, and as they come back because of the way they applied it or things like that, what's some of the magic that you see happening from class to class?
Yeah, so this is a little different class because I actually give them homework. So they have reading almost every week. And part of their homework is also, how do they apply what we're talking about in class? And while everyone's reading homework is going to be very similar, their application is always quite different because they're in different types of positions. Yes, they're all supervisors, but they are all usually in different environments in how they supervise. And that some of them may supervise one person and some may supervise 20. And so their application is going to be different. I think part of what we do in class, and then in that application homework, we really start to see, oh, this is how this comes alive for me as a supervisor. It's great to talk about it. It's great to talk theory and definitions. But when we get in there, we do a lot of activities in class so they can see what this looks like in reality. And then they get to go back and they can try it in the workplace. I always say, you know what, if you're worried about it, just tell everyone it's a piece of homework you're working on and you're just trying it out. Because then if you feel weird weird about it, they can go, they're just doing something for their class. So I always give them that as an excuse. But, most people, if they just will try something, and what I found is people will come back and say, oh my goodness, I tried that feedback process we talked about in class, and I've never been able to give feedback. And it was so simple because it was just 4 steps. And it was so easy. And so I love it when they actually go and try some of these things, and they have no fear because we've practiced it, we've talked about it in class, and they can start to see some success. And that's where they really start to buy in. But in the class itself, most of them don't know each other when they come in there. Unless they have someone else from their own industry or their own organization in the class, but they're all supervisors. And because we mix it up and we do activities together, they learn and they get to know other people, and they find, supervision is supervision. And, I love how when they share ideas with each other, oh, I tried this and it was really helpful for me. That's really where I think the magic comes. The content is great. I love the interaction, though. That's where we really start to see that everything come alive.
Yeah. Have you ever had folks who have gone through it maybe a year or two ago and circle back around to you, or do you run into somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I still, use this, or I still remember this nugget? So.
Yeah, the funniest story about that, I was training at Oklahoma State University, and I had a lady come up in my class, and she said it was her first week, and she said, I have to tell you something. And she goes, I want to show you this picture, and showed me a picture of a certificate that her husband had earned in the same Supervisory Academy in Enid, Oklahoma, several years before. And so a different institution. And she said, my husband was in this class, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and he loved it. And when I told him that you were doing the class on campus, he said, you have got to take that class because I still use that. And so it just warmed my heart, A, that he remembered me, and then B, that he said he still remembers the class. He still had his certificate. It made me so happy. And then he encouraged his wife to take the class, because he could have said, don't take it, it's the worst thing ever. But he encouraged her. He said, you got to sign up and do that. And so I do have people that I see them, I see people everywhere, and they say, I still remember some of those concepts we had. I always warn everyone on the last day of class, if I hear you're not being a great supervisor, I will have to flunk you, and you'll have to repeat this class even after the fact. And so there's always that little threat that I may come find them if they're not behaving the way they should. It's all in jest, but I want them to know that this is serious. And I have high expectations for those that go through the class. And I hope that they're different after it.
No, I agree. It's just some great tools. I know we use it internally with Meridian, send folks to it as well. We just really value the material and you. So there's a QR code that is popping up that gives you some more information about Supervisory Academy. So Meridian Technology Center will be launching another class in early 2024, and Lorinda will be that facilitator. It is so worth the investment. Again, I'm biased because Meridian puts it on, but I know I'm biased because I know the content is great, the value, the like you said, you talked about those relationships that people build even within the class. I know that we put a supervisor through, and there's like a cohort of 4 of them that they met in the class that I don't know if they would have crossed paths but for that, but now they go have coffee occasionally together, and it's that safe group of people that they know they can go, I'm struggling with this, how do you do it? And so those conversations still continue to happen.
I love hearing that. Excuse me, that is just one of those wonderful outcomes to that course. So I would encourage anyone, please join us. We would love to have you.
Yeah, do check out the QR code or go to meridiantech.edu and put in Supervisory Academy. It'll take you right to a page, talk more about how the class is structured and the pricing, or give us a call at Meridian at 377-3333. Any of us are happy to talk more about Supervisory Academy. Lorinda, thanks for your time today. It's always fun to talk supervisory and management. We need to have you on again and talk about leadership, because while we use those words interchangeably, sometimes those are 2 different things, and we could spend a whole nother Ascent just talking about leadership opportunities.
I would love it. Thank you for having me, Rebecca. I look forward to talking with you again in the future.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for joining us at today's Ascent. We want to thank our producer, Taylor, who's in the background making things like the QR code pop up and making sure everything is streaming. Appreciate all of you that joined us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Ascent.